Good evening, everyone. I will ask before we get started that anyone with cell phones or electronic devices, please silence them. And I'll call this land use planning meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. by formally recognizing that we are meeting on Aboriginal land that has been inhabited by Indigenous people from the beginning. As settlers, we're grateful for the opportunity to be good stewards of this land and thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this place for thousands of years. In particular, we acknowledge the proud heritage of our neighbors from Alderville First Nation and the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that 2 delegations be added to the May 13th planning agenda, the first being Tony Soulis, the second being Brenda Richardson, both to discuss Hamilton Woods West subdivision. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. Now I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that Council suspend the procedural bylaw 126-2018 to add section announcements to the May 13th planning agenda, and that will follow the approval of the agenda. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. And I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that Council approve the May 13th, 2019 Council Planning Meeting Agenda as amended. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. So I'll ask if there are any announcements. Councillor Bateman. Your microphone.
We did this announcement last meeting, but we've got a bigger crowd, so I'll remind everybody the Municipality of Brighton Accessibility Awareness Day is Wednesday, May 29th from noon till 3 in King Edward Park Community Center. And the other one I'll touch on is on the weekend, it was the Walk a Mile in Her Shoes in support of Three Oaks Shelter for Abused Women and Children. I would like to say that not only did I walk in those high heels, I rocked them. And we raised a lot of money. Pardon me?
It was on Saturday at Fraser Park in Belleville. Councillor Anderson?
I'll speak for most of us here. I think all of us are bowling Wednesday in the Big Brother for Kids Northumberland bowling here in Brighton. So just leave your money on the table before you leave, and we'll be happy to share it with raising money for the kids. So that's this Wednesday night.
It is this Wednesday night. Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Any other announcements? Councillor Tadman?
Thank you. I just cannot picture Councillor Bateman rocking in red heels, but to do with the Accessibility Awareness Day, that morning, the Friends of Presqu'île are if it's not flooded out on Beach 1, we'll be having the official placing of the Moby mats to make it accessible, but it doesn't look like that may happen, but it's supposed to be at 10.
Well, here's hoping it can happen, because it will mean good things are happening at the lake.
Yes.
Are there any other announcements?
The 29th.
That's
at
on
10.
That's after the flag raising at King Edward Park.
Well, as of now, the flag will not be raised because there's been a problem with the people that are supposed to produce the flag, but we will have a banner.
Well, I'll wait patiently to see what's being raised on the 29th.
Well, you can, Mayor, I'm sure you can fly a banner just as easy as a flag. We'll get you to march down Main Street with it.
We'll see how that works out for everybody.
In red heels.
Oh yeah, there you are. We'll just combine everything together here tonight.
Why not?
Are there any other announcements? I had the pleasure of attending the Invisible Ribbon Gala on Saturday. This is a fundraiser in support of the Military Family Resource Center. I don't know how much they raised, but it was a good night for an extremely good cause. And some of the comments coming out of there is I certainly hope that Brighton is able to partner with the MFRC more moving forward. We have a significant military presence in terms of families here in our community, residing in our community, so it would be good if we could partner with them. And this is Policing Week here in the municipality of Brighton and across the province, perhaps across the country, I'm not sure. But as part of that, the OPP are having a display at the King Edward Park on Thursday, May 16th between 10 and 2. I understand there'll be quite a lot of policing equipment there if anyone wants to stop by and see that. And I understand that on Saturday night, a number of you were able to attend the opening of the Brighton Speedway, so thank you for being able to represent on that. Appreciate that. Are there any other announcements?
If I could just add to that, I would like to thank the community publicly on behalf of the food bank, because we have a half-ton truck full of food ready to go put on the shelves on Wednesday for the food bank. So once again, thank you to the community for that support. And yes, we had fun at the races.
Good stuff. So I'll ask if there are any declarations of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof, if there are. Councillor LeBlanc.
Yes, 6.9. I am the owner of the property.
And that is the application for fill permit parts lot 31 and 32 concession B, Municipality of Brighton. Are there any other declarations? None noted. And we do have two delegations this evening after all, so I'll call Mr. Soulis up for first. And just remind delegations that they have 10... Mr. Soulis, could you come to this spot here? Just remind delegations they have 10 minutes to make their presentation, and then I will open up the floor to council for questions. Right there. Yeah. You've got it on. Now push the purple button. No, purple button in front of you. There you go.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Your Worship, councillors and staff. My name is Tony Soulis, and I live at 8 Foxden Drive. Unfortunately, when I submitted my request for the delegation at the time, I thought that I was too late, and I guess I was too late, in fact. And so I circulated what would have been the basis of my delegation to the councillors through the office, and I trust that they received it on Friday or thereabouts. I have two issues I wanted to talk about. First of all, because I missed that delegation cutoff, and I don't know if this is appropriate, Your Worship, but I'd like to talk to the process just for a few minutes that caused this to happen.
You have 10 minutes.
Okay. And I've got this written out and handed out to all of the council members. Unfortunately, while I was prepared to present a delegation related to Hamilton Woods development agenda items, I missed the submission cutoff date, and thus I am taking this alternative form of communication to share my thoughts with you. 3 minutes isn't very long to address the grave concerns that I have associated with the outstanding issues that have plagued this development envelope for far too long. On that basis, and given that there have been important administrative matters and procedures that have delayed a more timely delegation submission, I will use my time to express concerns with that documented administrative process. If I understand the process properly, the cutoff time for submissions is the Wednesday preceding the council planning meeting, and the posting of agenda for the meeting must be up by the Friday preceding the meeting. So on that basis, if that is correct, how are concerned citizens to know what is on the planned meeting agenda if the submission date precedes the agenda publication date? In addition, how is the primary party related to the posted topic made aware of intended agenda item and posting meeting date? That's to say, whatever the topic is and whoever it affects, when are they informed that their item is going to be placed onto the agenda? Secondly, and given that my name was submitted to staff for inclusion in the municipal advisory email mailout for all subject material related to Hamilton Woods Development Project, why did I not receive correspondence to that effect? As mentioned earlier, while I do not have the opportunity to address council on the Hamilton Woods matter, I would like to voice my objection to those agenda items being considered at this meeting. If council is not fully aware of the outstanding obligations that this developer needs to meet before any further consideration by council to extend approval for yet another phase that is not by council's agreement, qualified to receive further allowances until all past requirements have been fulfilled with respect to the Hamilton Woods development. On that basis, council should reject Toby Development's request for Phase 2 approval until council is satisfied that all those outstanding municipal and provincial requirements have been met, including pre-development requirements. So having said that, and if I have a few minutes left, I'd like to turn to the document that I submitted on Friday and take it from tab 1 through till to tab 9. And these really are bullets and related to the submission of documents or responses to documents from previous requests by Toby Developments to approve the various phases of the Hamilton Woods project. We live on the extreme east portion of the Phase 2 development as it will be defined. And so we're affected directly by what happens to the development of that area in our portion of the development. There's the western end, which borders on the Ontario Street end, and there's our end, which borders on the Lance Street end. And our concern, notwithstanding that the people up in the western end are satisfied, our concern is that we have not seen to date those issues that would put in front of the development approval that would cause it to move ahead. And the main portion of that is the stormwater development plan, which was submitted and rejected in 2017. And I'm not aware, and I don't think that there's been any public dialogue respecting that has been approved to date. Under the previous approvals that were given to the developer, there were promises made and unkept. And I can allude to the ones that said that you can build model homes, but you can't sell them. That was on Land Street and in the Cove area. Well, it didn't take very long for the models to go up and get sold. Here again, there's a request from the developer to forego the preliminary requirements for development so that he can go ahead and build model homes, which will not be sold. Well, those of us on our end don't believe that is fair, because we haven't seen the water management that we anticipated to be taken care of as a pre-development requirement being satisfactory to us, whose houses border on that piece of elevated ground. And to date, ever since the ground was slashed and cleared of overburden and topsoil, we have had nothing but misery from the runoff from those lands onto our backyards. Our sump pumps run continuously. They only started to run once the development was at a point where they started to clear cut and remove the topsoil. That's a fact. Move on to bullet number 3. The Lower Trent stated and recommended that Phase 2 of the development, the western end, not be approved until an approved stormwater management plan is in place. This was from the Lower Trent Conservation Authority. They had put that in there so that it would be a checkoff point before Toby Developments would move on further. Bullet number 4. The owner agrees that if the drainage works result in drainage or a change of drainage through private third-party lands, all work shall be carried out with approval of and to the satisfaction of the private owners by the municipal engineer. Any easements acquired by the owner over third-party lands for that purpose shall be conveyed to the municipality. Let me just take a second and talk about the development that has taken place on those private lands. They're private lands, and the owner is allowed to do whatever the owner wants to do, provided that we aren't encumbered by his development. In the case of Hamilton Woods, for those of you who have gone to look at the site, the developer has chosen to put in infrastructure and cover it up. If council and this municipality is supposed to inspect work before it's buried, you're going to have a lot of difficulty going back and approving that portion of the development that was done on the private lands. Because there's no place where that water has been approved to run into. Not into the Cove area, not into the Hamilton Pond, and not heading north because there's nothing there. Bullet 5, and the key point here is municipal specifications, or that any part of the works has been connected to the municipality's water works or sewage works prior to an approval being granted under the Ontario Water Resources Act. And the municipal engineer shall have the authority to order stop work by verbal notice to the contractor or the owner's consulting engineer. And in effect, what I just mentioned earlier applies to this bullet as well. Any time that there was going to be development done on those lands, private as they are, that's going to impinge onto the municipality's waterworks, that has to be documented and approved. This wasn't. Bullet 6 has to do with the Trent Conservation Authority and the concern that they had regarding this development. And one of the items that they picked up was that there was erroneous markings as to what the pipes were that were being used in one area of the development and what was actually documented, and there was a difference between the two. Not a big point, but I just thought I would flag that while I was going through the process here. Bullet 7, again from the Lower Trent Conservation Authority. It should be noted that we recommend that Phase 2 of the development, the western end, not be approved until an approved stormwater management plan is in place. LTC recommends that issues and concerns documented in our letter dated September 25th, 2017 be resolved prior to any further phasing of the subdivision being approved. Again, this comes back to what council here and what the municipality have approved. I'm not aware, and neither are the concerned people in my area aware, that there's been a consultation process that has advised us that yes, indeed, a stormwater management plan has been submitted and it has met provincial and other higher authority requirements.
Mr. Soulis, that's your 10 minutes. Are you able to wrap up for us?
Yes, if you can allow me, Your Worship, I have two bullets, two short ones. Under bullet number 8, environmental consideration, stormwater management, again, we recommend that a holding symbol be placed on the subject land and area development so that it's restricted until concerns regarding stormwater management are addressed. And the final bullet, a holding symbol is placed on the property which should be removed until stormwater management issues are addressed. And that should read, a holding symbol is placed on the property. So I thank you for the time. I know I may have been redundant for some of you who are here on the second term for this new administration, but we had issues with the past administration, and it had to do with follow-up and any sanctions that should have been put into place as a result of requirements not being fulfilled from one phase, and then allowing this developer to go on to the next phase on a promise that the previous commitments that were not fulfilled would be fulfilled. And we're afraid that if you go ahead and allow this developer to move ahead without the preconditions in place, we're going to fall into the same situation. I'm not confident that with the raised elevation that Hamilton Woods is going to be developed on is going to help us appreciably in the near future. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Sulis, and don't go anywhere just in case members of council have questions. So I'll open the floor to council to ask any questions you may have of the delegate. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Mr. Sulis, I'm wondering if these concerns that you have you discussed them with staff and have you received answers on any of them?
I haven't discussed it with staff, but one of my colleagues has, and I won't take away from her submission, and I'll let her deal with that. But I personally have not. But what I have done is I've kept up with this portfolio as it has materialized, and I've been on the ledger for email notices of any approvals. I've not received anything telling me that the stormwater management plan has been approved.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from members of council? Could I have a motion to receive the delegation, please? Moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Tadman. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. Sulis.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll call up our second delegation, Mrs. Richardson. Same general topic.
Good evening, Your Worship, Council and staff. I too would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm no stranger speaking in regards to Hamilton Woods, and I would like to just start with what we have said for the last 2.5 years, that anybody that lives around the pond, we are not opposed to it being enlarged. We are not opposed to Toby development. We want the pond looked after. We've been asking for a very long time for this pond to be looked after, and it is not working properly right now. It is low. It should not be low. There's no water flowing through those pipes right now into the pond. Somebody is going to get flooded at one end or the other. Having said that, my name is Brenda Richardson. I reside at 104 Raglan Street. Since October 2018, we have heard many times from both new councillors to the table and new upper management that they've only been here a short time and are trying to catch up on everything. Having said that, if tonight you agree to pass any application submitted by Toby Development regarding Hamilton Woods Subdivision Phase 2 without being given all documentations, you'll be doing so without knowing the history of Hamilton Woods. As councillors, I feel you would be doing this without the best interest of all parties concerned, especially the stakeholders of Harbour Point Pond. To me, this is no different when Toby Development wanted to drain into Harbour Point Pond without MOECC approval. That's when David Fisher started in on the investigations. Mr. Toby had requested a special meeting of council regarding his plans, and council then did not agree to it and turned him down in 2017. I strongly advise that all documentation be given to you since 2017, so you have a clear understanding what is at stake here. Many of said documentation was unable to be located by staff. So after discussion with Mr. Ty, I personally spent almost 2 hours with his assistant, Marianne, at the Public Works while she photocopied everything that I had regarding Harbour Point Pond, which included emails from Stephen Ashton, Richard Sparham, Bill Watson, David Fisher, and many councillors, photographs, pre-existing agreements with Toby Development and this municipality, and dates they were important regarding this project. Why they could not find these is very disturbing. One of the more important documents is the 4-page letter dated September 25th, 2017, and again October 27, 2017, to Stephen Ashton from Janet Noyes of LTC. Have all the recommendations outlined in her letter been met in this new stormwater plan for Phase 2? Do they meet the MOECC guidelines? If at least one of you do not understand all the figures and graphs outlined in the stormwater plans report, this should not be passed tonight. Council has received since 2017 4 different figures representing the total contributing area to Harbour Point Pond, which were from Cole Engineering, Brian Keane, EOR, and now Van Meer. We were assured by previous council, Bill Watson, Stephen Toby, and was recommended by David Fisher that before any final decisions were made regarding more water going into Harbour Point Pond, that a public meeting would be held. In June 2017, a resolution was passed that all information and documentations regarding Hamilton Woods subdivision were to be made available to the public at our local Public Works office. After 2 hours of finally being able to open tonight's agenda after getting the message that I was unauthorized to view this document, I was surprised to see only one sentence regarding the stormwater plan. Upon phoning Mr. Ty's assistance at the Public Works, she informed me that she had no knowledge or information regarding this. After many phone calls, emails, I received an email back from Janet Noyes. It was awfully kind of her to take it out of her busy schedule to respond to me. At this time, in her email, she who informed me that she had received a report on May the 6th, but understandably has not even had time to read it, and will not have time to have comments ready for tonight's meeting. After more emails, I finally received a copy of the stormwater plan from Brian Keane upon Mr. Ty's direction. I recommend that EUR review this new stormwater plan for Harbor Point Pond. That's what we're paying them for. As I said, this pond is not working properly. Nowhere in the plan do I see that it's going to be dredged. Nowhere do I see where the catch basin is going to be fixed. It's cracked. Remember, you again will own this pond or ponds if passed tonight. That's a lot of maintenance that will be eventually required by the town. Also, considering the time that it took and the length of time it took, could you please ensure that all documentation pertaining to Hamilton Woods are once again available at our Public Works office according to the resolution passed in June 2017? Also, my last conversation with Preston Parkinson at just the last meeting, he informed me that an ECA had been applied for Harbor Point Pond, but has still not been approved yet by the ministry. How can any work go forward? How can this town hand this pond over to Toby Developments if there's no ECA? I respectfully ask that Toby Developments applications be deferred to the next planning board meeting to give staff and council time to review these documents and give concerned citizens a time if we would like to be a delegation. Again, I'd like to thank you very much for letting me speak tonight.
Thank you, Mrs. Richardson. I'll open the floor to members of council if there are any questions. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that council receive the delegation from Brenda Richardson regarding Hamilton Woods Development Phase 2. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you, Mrs. Richardson. Which brings us to our statutory public meeting this evening. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, council move into the statutory public meeting May 13th at 6:57 p.m. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. We have two items on tonight's statutory public meeting. The purpose of the first item is to request a decision of council on a zoning bylaw for the following application, being file number Z05-2019. Owner Len Kuipers Construction. Location is Part Lot 4, Concession 2, Part 4 of Plan 39R 7037, 81 Simpson Street. Mr. Ty, by what method and on what date was notice of this zoning bylaw amendment application given?
Thank you, Your Worship. Notice of the application amendment was sent by first-class prepaid mail to all property owners within 120 meters on April the 17th, 2019. Notice was also circulated to prescribed ministries and agencies, as well as a sign notice being posted on the property.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. And would you please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and what it would accomplish?
The purpose and effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the subject lands from urban residential 1, exception 2, and environmental protection exception 2 to urban residential exception 32 and environmental protection exception number 6. The rezoning was to fulfill a condition of consent of consent applications B06-2011, B07-2011, as granted by this council on February the 11th, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. Does the owner, applicant, or agent wish to make any comments?
Sean Legere, planner with RFA Planning Consultant. I'm the agent for the application. We have reviewed the staff report and amending bylaw and are in concurrence with the recommendation. I'm here to assist with answering any questions council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Legere. Are there persons present who have questions or comments regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application? Are none noted? Are there any questions or comments regarding this proposed zoning bylaw amendment from members of council? Councillor Tadman.
And through you, Mayor, I don't know who will respond to this. I guess, Daryl, it's up to you now. There was some problems maybe 2 years ago that a road went in and there was a waterway and the bridge had to be, I think you recall that, maybe you do. And some neighbors were quite upset that the developer of this property went ahead without consent. And now I see that he wants to sever, he has an encroachment. My understanding it's from his own place, isn't it, that encroachment? I don't know who else lives up that way. So I'm just a bit concerned that in this case, in some other cases, I see developers going ahead and doing things and then coming back and asking for permission. So hopefully this is a good warning to all of us to watch these things happen. I was just reminded not too long ago by another neighbor said that, in this case and another case, people are doing things before they've got consents. And maybe you could explain, Daryl, why he needs the severance from the pool, is it, in a driveway? Is that the driveway from his own place? Because I don't know any other place up there.
Mr. Ty?
Through the chair, the handful of consents that were granted in February 11, 2019 included one lot line addition in order to rectify an encroachment situation, as well as create one new severed lot plus a retained lot. The severed lot is the middle lot between the existing residence to the north and the retained lands to the south. The one lot did have an existing or a driveway constructed. We have received 2 letters of comment from Lower Trent, one prior to the consents and one prior to the rezoning, and they have stipulated certain requirements for the not only the development but for the bridging of the creek, including geotechnical work, which has all been incorporated into the design. So the Lower Trent have advised they have no further comments.
Just to follow up, yeah, and I sit on the board and I know that happened, but that driveway was created by the developer. There wasn't a driveway there before, and then he went through with applying. So I guess I'm making the statement that there's times when things are done ahead of any approvals. Mm-hmm. And now that it's there and you've got the approvals, I guess there's not much we can do about it.
And those approvals were granted by Lower Trent after the fact, is that my understanding?
My recollection, Your Worship, is that the works were corrected, were rectified in order to satisfy Lower Trent's requirements with respect to the construction, the design and construction of the over creeks. And that work was done prior to the application for consent. And then Lower Trent advised that once receiving the application for consent to create one additional lot, they expressed no further concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. Are there any other questions from members of council? Are none noted? Does the agent wish to make any final comments? Thank you. Mr. Ty, do you have any final comments?
Nothing further.
Thank you. Does council wish to make a decision at this time on this zoning bylaw amendment application? Yes. I have a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that council receives the report regarding rezoning application Z05-2019, as prepared by the municipal planning consultant, and that council enacts a bylaw to rezone certain lands located in Part Lot 4, Concession 2, Part 4 of Plan 39R 7037 of the Municipality of Brighton from Urban Residential 1 Exception 2 Zone and Environmental Protection Exception Number 2 Zone to Urban Residential 1 Exception Number 32 Zone and Environmental Protection Exception Number 6 Zone. Is there any further discussion from members of council? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. The second item in our statutory public meeting is to request a decision of council on a zoning bylaw amendment for the following application, being file number Z07-2019. The owner is Chuck DeWall. The location is Part Lot 25, Concession A, Part 1 of Plan 39R, 11286, 158 Lisgar Street. And Mr. Ty, by what method and on what date was notice of this zoning bylaw amendment application given?
Notice of the application was sent by first-class prepaid mail to all property owners within 120 meters on April the 17th, 2019. Notice was also circulated to all the agencies prescribed under the Planning Act, as well as the sign being posted on the property.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. And would you please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and what it would accomplish?
The purpose and effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the subject lands from Community Facility Exception 7 to Rural Residential Zone in order to permit development of the property in the form of a single detached dwelling.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. And does the owner, applicant, or agent wish to make any comments? Getting a no, a head shake no. Are there persons present who have questions or comments regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application? Come forward, please. If you just push the lavender button in front of you and state your name for the record.
My name is Steve Paradzi. I'm the next door neighbor. I do not have an opposition to the change of the proposal. I just have a concern about the water supply to my property because we share the same vein. I've talked to Mr. Chuck DeWald. He told me to get the well information, my well information, and I do have it here. And it does show that within an hour, my flow goes from 20 liters down to 7 liters. We're a family of 5, and I do run out of water already. So that is my only concern, is the water supply.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ty, can you speak to that in any way?
Not specifically from a hydrogeological perspective, however, the property is currently zoned for a church, which I would submit would be a heavier draw on a water source, particularly during church-type events, than a typical single detached dwelling with a family. I don't know the circumstances or characteristics of this gentleman's particular well, whether it's a dug well or whether it's drilled. However, I would expect, typically the municipality does not require proof of potable water at this stage.
And just to be clear, if a religious institution were to come along and wish to build a worship center at that location today, without any changes being made, they would simply apply through staff for a building permit. It would not come to council. There would be no decision of council to be made.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate your time. Yeah. Are there any other comments or questions from members of the public? Unnoted. Are there questions or comments regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment from members of council? Councillor LeBlanc.
Through you, Mayor, to Gerald, you said that you said there was no requirement for potability, but what about for draw or cone of depressions?
Through the chair, the municipality typically on private services, development of this scale being a single detached dwelling would not require any type of documentation regarding well water.
So whether or not a person can drill or dig a well on a property is not a consideration that council takes in during severance or rezoning applications?
Well, that's correct. With the exception if there's a demonstrated shortage of water in an area and someone comes along that is proposing the creation of, say, 3 or 4 lots on a virgin parcel of land, then the municipality may ask for a hydrogeological assessment. Thank you.
Councillor Rowley?
I believe previous to the zoning, this zoning of the community facility exception, it was a rural residential zone, wasn't it? So we're just going back to where we were pre the application from the church.
Mr. Tai, can you speak to that? You don't know the history. I don't recall either. I don't know whether it was zoned rural or whether it was zoned rural residential, but whatever the zoning was, I believe they could have put a house there. Yes. Councillor LeBlanc.
Through you, Mayor, my point was, we've had basements dug in different locations where we have sub pumps running all the time. Here we could possibly have 2 houses running out of water all the time. What is the responsibility of the town? So
I'll look to Mr. Tai, but I believe the answer is we don't have responsibility for the draw of water on private services. Mr. Tai?
On private services, through the chair of the municipality, really issues no approval or non-approval for private well water.
Thank you. Councillor Bateman?
Thank you. Was there a hydrogeological study required when it was zoned for a place of worship? Because that would be the equivalent of possibly 3 or 4 residents.
Not to my knowledge, I don't have that information though.
Any further questions? Councillor Tadman?
I've always understood it's the person that owns the property that takes the responsibility for getting as much water, whether it's a dug well or drilled. So I would understand that in this case, Mr. DeWall would be making sure that this particular dwelling would have a good well before he'd start building. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but you said it was on the same vein. Is there, do you know that for a fact? I don't understand how you would know that even.
I don't know how the...
But I do believe that it's always the responsibility of the person that's building on the property to make sure they have water.
Right.
So.
Right. Any other questions from members of council? Does the applicant wish to make any final comments?
I did talk to the homeowner next door.
Could you, Mr. DeWall, could you come up, please? And just hit the purple button in front of you and introduce yourself for the record, if you would, sir.
My name is Chuck DeWall. I'm the property owner. Your worship, I did talk to the homeowner next door and offered to look at his well report. I know most of the well drillers in the area, and I mentioned tentatively that it could be just an issue where he needs to have the well cleaned out, or whatever I offered, whatever I could do to help him in that. The property that I do have right now has a well on it existing that was put in for the church, and it has sufficient water to satisfy a single-family dwelling.
And that's the well you'd be using, Mr. DeWall?
Yes.
Yeah, very well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Tai, do you have any final comments?
Nothing further.
Does council wish to make a decision at this time on the zoning bylaw amendment application? You already had your chance, though. Go ahead. Ask your question. Very well. We're moving on.
No, but seriously, you should be getting a second question. Go ahead, Doug.
it was just when I drove by the property today, I saw that both wells were new construction. They were old constructed wells, so they meet all the new well protocol and standards. So I just wanted to throw that in.
That wasn't a question. Thank you, Mr. DeWall. Appreciate it. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Tadman, that Council receives the report regarding rezoning application Z07-2019 as prepared by the municipal planning consultant, and that council enacts a bylaw to rezone certain lands located in Part Lot 25, Concession A, being Part 1 of Plan 39R 11286 from the Community Facility Exception Number 7 zone to the Rural Residential Zone. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that council move out of the statutory public meeting May 13th, 2019 at 7:14 p.m. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. And we'll move into planning and development reports. Our first report is with regard to Roslyn Estates Subdivision Phase 2 from 1751819 Ontario Incorporated. Mr. Tai, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further.
I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Tadman, that council receives the report regarding the Roslyn Estates subdivision as prepared by the municipal planning consultant, that council receive and accept the pre-servicing and model home agreements as circulated and directed staff to provide copies of said agreements to 1751819 Ontario Incorporated, and the council enacts required bylaws authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign each of the pre-servicing and model home agreements on behalf of the municipality of Brighton. Is there any discussion? Councillor Rowley?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just wondering if the developer, if there's any indication that, I know it's not the construction site, but that there could be a little bit of road improvement to Sanford Street. I understand it's construction, but it's in a pretty wear and tear way. Is there anything going to be done, or are we having to wait until the complete subdivision is finished?
I think I would ask either Mr. Tai or Mr. Castleman if they could address that issue. This is with regard to the deterioration of Sanford Street. Either of you gentlemen wish to tackle that?
Through the chair, the condition of Sanford Street is a priority for the municipality, and in speaking with the Director of Public Works, it is slated for reconstruction, I believe, next year. With respect to the Phase 1 of Roslyn, with the lots fronting onto Roslyn, there will be further work done in that stretch in order to rectify a problem with the sanitary connections to those houses. So I would expect that there would be some remedial repair, at least in that section. Yes.
Councillor Tadman?
Through you, Mayor, I do believe that our Director of Public Works said there'd be some work this year to make it more acceptable for driving through until it's reconstructed.
I think there's also some drainage concerns that need to be addressed by the municipality.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I see Mr. Castleman making some notes here, so that's a good thing. Go ahead.
And further, maybe those in attendance would like the reassurance that there's security held. Isn't that correct? You have it in your report here. So that's 15,000. That's a financial security. And if if he doesn't get his pre-service agreement and everything, we hold that money, correct?
Through the chair, there's a 15,000 letter of credit for the model homes, and there's in the draft agreement, there's a breakdown of construction costs estimate totaling 289,381. Staff have yet to apportion that according to the actual works. The staff are proposing to work with Brian Keane, the municipal peer reviewer, in order to finalize that prior to execution of the agreement. Yeah.
Any other questions from members of council? Councillor Anderson?
Just for my information, Councillor Tadman made a good point there. Is it, you said it's a line of credit? Or is it $15,000 cash?
Letter of credit. Letter of credit?
Letter, okay.
It's a monetary guarantee.
Okay.
Yeah. From the bank.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? All in favor? Or any opposed? Motion is carried. Next planning report is with regard to Hamilton Woods West Subdivision Phase 2. Mr. Ty, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Through the chair, we do have with us this evening to assist with a couple of agenda items, Brian Keane from Jewel Engineering, municipal peer review engineer. He's a particular specialist in stormwater management, so any issues or concerns or questions relative to that particular item, I would suggest council defer to Mr. Keane.
And Mr. Keane is the municipality's peer reviewer, as I understand it, Mr. Ty?
That's correct. Yes.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, seconded by Councillor Bateman. The council receives the report regarding the Hamilton Woods West subdivision as prepared by the municipal planning consultant. The council receive and accept the pre-servicing and model home agreements as circulated and direct staff to provide copies of said agreements to Gordon Toby Developments Limited. And that council enacts the required bylaws authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign each of the pre-servicing and model home agreements on behalf of the municipality of Brighton. Are there any questions from members of council? Deputy Mayor Vink.
Thank you. I'm not sure if Mr. Ty or Mr. Keane can help with these questions. We've heard the concerns from citizens, and I'm wondering if there are items like the pond not working well, or the and wondering if we do have the approval of the storm management plan, and how those things affect the approval, or how the approval of this affects those things, whether it changes anything, whether we lose control over those things. So if you can just kind of give us a bit of an idea, address some of the concerns and give us a bit of an idea on where some of those things stand, that would be great.
Mr. Keane.
Mr. Mayor, so the stormwater management report has been submitted. As has been mentioned before, there have been quite a few versions of this report in the past. The current report does respond to, I would say, satisfactorily to all of the comments that have been on the table for many years and the concerns with drainage out here. The Conservation Authority has received the report, and as has been mentioned, they haven't had a chance to review it. Meanwhile, I do talk to the Conservation Authority. They are aware what's in the contents of the report. I did have a chance to review it prior to Ms. Noyes responding. No, just as a clarification, the Lower Trent Conservation is a review agency that provides input to planning decisions. They're not a planning authority. So the Conservation Authority doesn't provide planning approval of a report, but they do give you good advice. So the municipality does look for the comments from the Conservation Authority when making those decisions. The approval authority for a stormwater management facility is the Ministry of the Environment. So they receive an application. So the application's been sent to them, albeit very recently. Now their review is not a technical review. So when the Ministry of the Environment is looking at this, they're just going through a checklist to make sure that certain facets are there, but they do not do the technical review. So the technical review on behalf of the municipality comes through a peer review and also the Conservation Authority. They do a technical review.
Any other questions from members of council? Councillor Tadman? Trying to give her
Through you again to Mr. Keane. You do a lot of our peer reviewing, and you also talk a lot to Lower Trenton. I'm very aware that they're very busy now with all the flooding, and that is probably why you haven't got a final report. But you've talked enough with her to realize that for the most part, what you have peer reviewed is acceptable at this point anyways.
Again, without speaking for her,
yeah, I know.
I have a pretty good understanding of the concerns of the Conservation Authority, and I've been, again, involved with this file for several years. So it is my belief that what she has in front of her does respond to her concerns.
Okay, and just to follow up, sir, Mayor, I don't mean
Carry
sir.
Carry on. I'll take it.
It was suggested by one of the delegation that the pond's not working now. Could you address that? You haven't probably been over there just lately, but the lady's concerned that it was not working because it's low. Could you explain how the storm pond works?
Certainly be happy to. Mr. Mayor, so storm pond works by providing volume. There's something called dead storage or permanent pool, and there's something called active storage or extended detention. So for quality treatment, stormwater pond works by allowing settling of the inflowing water. So water comes in dirty, goes out pretty clean. The pretty clean depends on what the objective is and how much storage is provided. So the pond has been assessed by others, and it is lacking in dead pool, permanent pool storage. So this development indicates how much storage they require, and their proposal is to go in and excavate out the facility. So the municipality could either remediate and provide the missing storage as it currently is, or they could allow the developer to proceed and do it really at his cost. So he will go in and excavate out what is required for storage to satisfy his needs. And I'm not sure the municipal arrangement with the developer, but essentially by the time the developer is finished, you will have excess storage in the facility. So the facility also does a second job, and it provides quantity control, so flooding protection from the downstream. And that is a different calculation, and they also are going to be excavating out the pond to provide sufficient flooding storage for phases 2 to 5. So this next stage of excavation of the facility will respond to all of Hamilton Woods' needs in the near future.
Thank you, Mr. Keane. Any further questions? Councillor LeBlanc?
Through you, Mayor. So when you looked at designing this, the length of time that it took you to do the design for the stormwater management pond, for what you're presenting, was it because it took a year and a half for our stormwater management plan to come in place? And did you use any of our stormwater management plan and data to design in this pond?
Through you, sir. So I'm not the designing firm. It was Van Meer that did the design. Pardon me. And I did the peer review of it. So they designed what was required to meet the needs of Hamilton Woods. Plus, I know this report has still got fresh ink on it, but they're also looking after all the incoming water from upstream. So in the existing condition, there's a lot of water that drains toward this facility and toward the residents that live in the area. So they're providing an excavation of the existing Harbor Point facility, plus they're proposing a second facility north that will provide quantity control.
Through you, Mayor, is that the one by Lance? Yes. So my question again is, in the design that's in this that you peer reviewed, does it meet the standard of our stormwater management plan that we've adopted?
Yeah, indeed it does. So it is it is looked at all the incoming catchment area, and you can see in their report the catchment area drawings. They've produced the hydraulic modeling that is required to figure out where the water's going. They're receiving water from the Ruse subdivision that discharges through their own facility, and it just drains into the area. So they're picking up all of that water. They're picking up water from the McMillan Estates, Lance North, and an area that's called Harbor Point North. They're also picking up water from Ontario Street. Now, most of the Ontario Street portion is draining to Ontario Street, but there is a component of it, the major flow, that does drain down through here. So their modeling has modeled all of that, has provided enough quantity storage in this facility. It would be north of Hamilton Woods, to discharge it all to the capacity of the storm sewer system. So all of that northern water will be controlled to an acceptable level to bring it into the storm sewer system and then safely through the Harbor Point Pond.
Councillor Rowley?
Thank you. I have two questions. The first being, I believe that this council approved a significant dollar amount to improve and maintain Harbor Point Pond this year. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes.
Significant dollars.
We budgeted significant dollars for the stormwater, to deal with the recommendations out of the stormwater management plan.
as it refers to Harbor Point Pond.
$200,000.
Yes, exactly. So I guess part of my question would be that I'm assuming will get done this year, so that will certainly help alleviate some of the problems that kind of come down to Harbor Point. My other question is, Mr. Soulis made a comment, and I was wondering, Mr. Ty, do we know for sure that Mr. Toby has satisfied both the municipality and the provincial requirements for this part of his subdivision?
Through the chair, the source of focus of satisfaction in this case would be the municipality, and of course the ECA for from the Ministry of the Environment. There are really no other provincial requirements.
Deputy Mayor?
And just to confirm, we are hearing concerns, and that, of course, we all take that seriously, but we also we count on you to let us know, are there concerns, are there boxes that haven't been checked that we need to be concerned about if we're going to approve this at this time?
Through you, sir. So one of the big concerns I do hear quite a bit from the residents is drainage, and of course basement flooding. What I've noticed is that the plan prepared by Hamilton Woods also does address a lot of that external drainage problem. Some of the residents on Foxden have complained, and rightly so, about drainage on their northern boundary. So the proposal, as part of what Hamilton Woods is going to do in this very next phase, is to pick up a lot of that drainage that would be coming down towards them. They're going to put in a bunch of catch basins in that swale, so that will also help pick up that water. Right now, the water is a very long and shallow gradient swale that it's going on. It's really too shallow. So that can be repaired by installing those catch basins. So as far as we can see, the proposal is going to be answering all of the concerns that residents have been putting forward. And it does provide the municipality that assurance that the flooding control is going to be provided and stormwater quality will be achieved. So we see the drainage as being put forward as pretty good condition.
Councillor Anderson.
So you're saying that would be done first before anything else, as well as that inspection by the ECA, you said? Because that was one of the concerns as well? There hadn't been inspected?
So the Ministry of the Environment typically doesn't do an inspection. However, they are starting now to ramp up their interest in stormwater management facilities. So they won't provide an inspection of the pond for their approval. They just simply review the drawings. What will happen is the developer, once he gets an approval, he will be looking to start putting the municipal infrastructure in place. As for the timing of the construction of the pond, it will happen at the same time as development, and this northern pond will also happen at the same time. So, as for details of what they do when, it's difficult for us to say. But stormwater management, the pipes go in the ground first, and then they do the above ground work. So it's quite conceivable that the work that they're proposing will begin to repair all of that water problem that people are facing.
And Mr. Keane, sometimes we throw terms out, and for the benefit of the public and some newer members of council, would you tell me what an ECA is, please?
Pardon me. Okay. So ECA is an environmental compliance approval. It is the authorization that municipality has to allow pipes to go into the ground and stormwater management ponds to be built and to be maintained and operated.
Thank you, Mr. Keane. We get used to these terms, and I forget that there's sometimes new people around the table. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you. Mr. Ty, I guess I can ask this of you. So basically what we are, if we approve this tonight, is just the pre-servicing for the model homes, not any more development than that at this stage?
Through the chair, it would be the entirety of Phase 2, which is the one new street coming in off Ontario, and then the two stranded lots on the Lance, and that's the extent of it.
Thank you.
So the pre-servicing would be for the entire new portion of the subdivision, not just the model homes. Right. Councillor LeBlanc.
Through you, Mayor, would this new development, would it also address some of the flooding that we've seen on Foxden and some of the end of it? Is this one of the reasons that it's done?
Yes, in fact, it will help to resolve a lot of the Foxden flooding, as will a little portion of work that may be before council in the near future for Cardinal View subdivision way over on the west side. Both of those subdivisions have been working with the Hamilton Woods plan to chip away at the problem, so they're all working cooperatively to come up with a solution. And I think the solution is a good one.
Councillor Bateman.
On Foxden Drive, thank you, Mayor. For the flooding that has been brought up here a few council meetings ago, and we're talking about it now, that flooding is not part of the Toby developments, correct? That Foxden Drive is not Toby development. So that correction with the catch basins, is this going to be going back to whoever the developer is of Foxden Drive, or is that the municipality, or?
I believe that the catch basins that were discussed are being installed by Toby Developments in a future phase, or in the next phase, the coming phase, to mitigate their responsibility for drainage onto other properties. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. King.
No, you're right. And may I add also that there will be another catch basin added. It'll be the responsibility of a landowner on the south side. There is an undeveloped portion of land on Foxden, and there will be a catch basin and storm sewer advanced there as well whenever that little piece happens. Yep. So there will be 3 new catch basins added for that drainage issue, plus the Cardinal View subdivision on the west. We'll be adding in another catch basin way over on the west side that will help with flooding that was happening there along 34 Foxden.
Any other questions? Members of council? The stormwater plan that is before, I guess it's before the Lower Trent at the moment, or before a number of agencies, I guess, at the moment. We're required to have that submitted in advance of a subdivision agreement. Is that the case?
Through the chair, this is a pre-servicing agreement which would allow the developer to begin the work related to the infrastructure. Once that gets going, then the applicant, the developer, has the option of then coming forward saying, now I'm requesting the municipality proceed with a subdivision agreement and final approval. The entire development is the subject of a master agreement. So each phase, when it comes through, is a supplementary agreement to the master agreement. And that would be the subject of a future council meeting. And we would be bringing forward a recommendation, a report, a recommendation to grant final subdivision approval, to sign the M plan, any registered plans that reference plans that pertain to phase 2. And that all has to be registered before final approval actually is granted.
So at what point is the developer required to provide the municipality with the stormwater plan that's currently under review?
Through you, before we would issue a pre-servicing agreement, staff would want to be confident that stormwater management plan would work. So that is why this pre-servicing agreement has been held off for so long, because we never did have a stormwater management report that staff was satisfied with. So now we do have a report that we are comfortable with, and that allows staff the ability to support a pre-servicing agreement. It is a condition of the subdivision agreement that a stormwater management report be submitted and approved. So before the municipality does sign off on the subdivision agreement, that report would have had to have been provided. It is there now, and as a peer reviewer, I'm satisfied with it. It will still have to go through Lower Trent Conservation. So there is time then for Lower Trent Conservation to look at it and feed into it if they want to see some changes.
So staff is confident that what we have before us, moving forward with the pre-service agreement will help the drainage issues with the concerns in the other portion of the subdivision, and is satisfied with how stormwater will be managed in that subdivision.
Staff are satisfied, yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Rowley?
Just one, once again, for public interest. Now that we have the stormwater plan, and it's been reviewed by staff and it will go to Lower Trent, will the public then have an opportunity to have a look at that as well as concerns neighbors? No?
I would assume it will become at some point a public document that can be reviewed by members of the public. Mr. Tai?
Through the chair, actually, as Mr. Richardson indicated to council, she already has a copy of it.
So can any member of the public come and see a copy of that?
Yes.
And they could just come to 67 Sharp Road, our Public Works and Planning office? Yes. Thank you. Councillor LeBlanc?
So, to you, our engineer, our peer reviewer, so the way you look at this, you look at it, we live with what we have and the problems we have, or we move forward and solve them?
Well, clearly, the move forward and solve the problems is always our objective. And this development, people have had a long list of complaints. And again, that's why it's taken so long for a satisfactory stormwater management plan to come forward. And this one has considered all of those complaints and the requirements that they have provincially. And comments that have been given by staff and by Conservation Authority. So this stormwater management report does resolve the drainage issues. Fortunately, they didn't put blinders on and just do the minimum that they were required. I think it's a pretty, in fact, it overachieves. It has very significant storage that's being proposed.
I see that. Thank you.
Councillor Tadman?
Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Keane again, could you just repeat what you said about if the developer was to be the one, which he will be, it'll be at his cost? Definitely the expansion, and then we will have more capacity than what's needed. Did I hear that correct?
Well, wasn't aware of any agreement that the municipality has had prior to this to go and excavate, but if the municipality is putting some money into excavate, the developer will be there also excavating. So I'm sure that if the municipality and the developer did work in tandem, that there would be a substantial cost benefit to do the work. So the municipality wants to put in some storage, the developer has to have some storage, and his storage is in excess of what you need to do. So there would certainly be a cost advantage for you to work together if you so chose with the developer.
Okay. Anything further? Councillor Bateman?
If I could just go back to, I want to wrap my head around the Foxtrend Drive portion of it, because I think at a previous council meeting we determined Foxtrend Drive wasn't assumed by the municipality. So whoever the developer was of that development, do we have any money retained from them, and should they not be stepping up to aid in this?
So that's not really something we should be discussing in this motion, but if you would want to you could certainly have a conversation with the planner offline, or if you wanted to bring a notice of motion, we could certainly have that brought forward to another council meeting. Okay? Any other questions on this motion? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. And the next planning report is with regard to stopping up, closing and conveying a municipal road allowance, the proposed application and procedure. So this is a policy being brought forward for council's consideration. Mr. Tai, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further, Your Worship.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that council receives the report regarding the proposed application and Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. The council receives the report regarding proposed application and procedures for considering a request to stop up, close, and convey a municipal road allowance as prepared by the municipal planning consultant, and the council hereby enacts a bylaw which will serve to adopt procedures for the stopping up, closure, and conveyance of a municipal road allowance. Are there questions from members of council? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. Next report is with regard to the official plan amendment, part lots 32 and 33, concession 1, 300 and 314 Whites Road in the municipality of Brighton. Mr. Ty, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that council received the report regarding the official plan amendment, part lots 32 and 33, concession 1, 300 and 314 Whites Road, municipality of Brighton, is prepared by the municipal planning consultant for information and future reference, and that staff be directed to bring back a further report back to council for the June 10th, 2019 meeting. Is there any discussion? Mr. Ty, are we having any, how do I say this gently, overall concerns with our relationship with planning at the county? Or is this a one-off? Be honest. Mr. Castleman?
Sure, perhaps I'll jump in here. I'm just beginning to understand the relationship that we have with the county. Had the opportunity to attend my first CAO meeting today, so I'll be meeting with my counterpart at the county as early as next week to talk about a number of different issues, one of which is planning services.
Thank you, Mr. Castleman. I appreciate that response. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Our next report is with regard to affordable housing opportunity. Mr. Ty, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that council receives the report regarding affordable housing opportunity as prepared by the municipal planning consultant, that staff be directed to pursue further communications with Stillbrook in order to explore available details, and further that staff also contact Northumberland County regarding recently announced provincial funding opportunities. Is there any discussion? Deputy Mayor.
Yes, I think this is a great idea. We have heard of some other retirement residents coming to town, so that's my only concern is that we're not maybe going down one road too often. I think as far as affordable housing, I just want to say that I want to look at other opportunities as well, like for affordable housing for all ages, not just retirement. I think that's what's really lacking, and so I'm not saying I'm opposed to this. I'm just saying that I think we need to have a broader look at this idea.
And certainly our strategic plan speaks to affordable living in the community and what we might call attainable housing rather than affordable housing. The Stillbrook model is certainly, I had an opportunity to sit in a presentation with Stillbrook at the Campbellford Memorial Hospital, and their model is rent geared to income for seniors. So it is a truly affordable model as we think about affordability under what the government calls affordable housing. And just starting down this road, we would be long down the road of the existing retirement residents coming into the community. Anything else? Councillor Tadman?
I don't think we'll be making a decision for a while because there's so many questions here and agreements that they want us as a municipality for land and development charges and everything. So we will be getting a report, and I think then down the road we'll be able to consider it better.
If we were to go down the road, it's a serious commitment from the municipality.
Yeah, it would be wonderful to be able to do something like this, but do we have the land for one thing? That would be a major issue.
Well, I think we both know we don't at the moment.
No, unless we get a whole bunch of money from the province and remediate some property.
There it is. Anything further? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Next report is proposed changes to the land use planning system in Ontario. Mr. Ty, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson. The council received the report regarding proposed changes to the land use planning system in Ontario as prepared by the municipal planning consultant for information, and the staff be directed to undertake a detailed assessment of proposed amendments and bring a further report back to council at a future meeting. Is there any discussion? Does this affect in any way our ongoing consultations with regard to our zoning bylaw, comprehensive zoning bylaw, our mature neighborhood study, or our official plan study?
Through the chair, potentially, yes. When we first received the minister's letter, I believe it was the beginning of February, I put the consultants on high alert, and in other words, be ever vigilant that go ahead, complete the background work, which is probably another month away. However, prior to getting into any policy formulation, we're anticipating that these particular changes being proposed now will actually be settled. And so the new planning regime could then be implemented through the official plan.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. Anything further from members of council? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Our next report is with regard to the proposed amendments to the Conservation Authorities Act. Mr. Ty, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further.
I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vink and seconded by Councillor Bateman. The council receives the report regarding proposed amendments to the Conservation Authorities Act as prepared by the municipal planning consultant. The council defer any renewal of an agreement with the Lower Trent Conservation Authority until such time as the proposed changes are finalized, and the council advise staff of any further action required on behalf of the municipality. Is there any discussion from members of council? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Next item is a report regarding Lakeside Landing Plan of Subdivision. Mr. Ty, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further.
I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, and it will require a seconder, that council receive the report regarding Lakeside Landing Plan of Subdivision as prepared by the municipal planning consultant, and that staff be directed to bring forward a recommendation and report for the June 3rd council meeting. So the motion should read that council receive the report regarding Lakeside Landing Plan of Subdivision prepared by the municipal planning consultant, period. Any questions? Councillor Rowley?
Thank you. Just some clarification that doesn't...
Actually, sorry, I need a seconder.
I'll second that then, just for discussion.
Go ahead.
What happened to the other two?
Councillor Rowley?
Thank you. Just for some clarification, for sure, we're not approving anything, we're just receiving the report?
That is correct.
Okay. And we don't have anyone here that we can ask questions to regarding Lakeside Landing as well, do we? As far as any, I just have some questions based on the report, but I can wait if we're bringing this item back.
Well, Mr. Ty is here.
Mr. Ty is here, I get that, but maybe some of my questions have more to do with the pumps and things. I'm not so sure that Mr. Ty he's an expert on planning. I'm not so sure he's an expert at pumps and things.
But Mr. Castleman's here.
Mr. Castleman, are you an expert on pumps and things?
But I'm sure he could give us some information. Mr. Castleman, can you address that issue?
Through you.
Thank you.
I'm certainly not an expert on pumps and things. But the purpose of the report is to give you an update, give council an update with respect to the OMB decision that was made back from the hearing back in August of 18. So we've done that, and we've given you a little bit of a teaser in that the staff team has looked at the low-pressure system, has made no determination. All we're trying to do is understand the new technology as it moves forward from time to time, and get some learnings from our neighbors who have used this system successfully in neighboring municipalities. Quite frankly, we've just had that introduction and that educational session not so long ago, and as a municipal team, we have not had an opportunity to turn our mind to the low-pressure system at all.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Councillor Tadman.
I really don't understand.
Your microphone.
Sorry, I don't understand what's going on, because my understanding is that you just want to move the first point here and receive it, which means that we're going to receive it and do nothing. And I think it's, according to what the planners put forward, is that the council directs staff to continue with processing the subject application and direct the applicant to provide compelling evidence.
That's my view.
And all of a sudden now we're just going to receive it, and in other words, not do anything about this development. And I think that's totally unfair.
So item 6.8, the recommendation from staff is that council receive the report regarding Lakeside Landing Plan of Subdivision as prepared by the municipal planning consultant for information. And as we read the background, we discover that staff will be bringing forward something at a future date. But
that's not what the motion is saying. The motion you just read.
that council receive the report regarding Lakeside Landing Plan of Subdivision as prepared by the municipal planning consultant. That's the motion on the
But
floor.
the second one of that says that staff be directed to bring forward a recommendation and report for the June 3rd council meeting.
I believe the updated report recommends receiving the report alone. Mr. Castleman.
Just for clarity, at my direction, the second part of the motion was taken out because I did not want to commit staff to coming back in such a short turnaround without having adequate time to review the low-pressure system. So I didn't feel that the June 3rd turnaround was adequate time for staff to turn their mind to this technical system that we were certainly not in favor of back in 2017. So will a report come forward in the future? You bet. But it just won't be on June 3rd. It'll be sometime later on.
Councillor LeBlanc.
Through Mr. Tye. I read your report, and you have a valid ECA, Certificate of Approval, from the Ministry of Environment. I don't know if you've ever gone through a Certificate of Approval process, have you?
Through the chair, yes, our office has.
Before the C of A is submitted to the Ministry of Environment for application, you must have town approval, correct?
That's correct.
Before the certificate of authorization is issued, there's a letter sent from the Ministry of Environment to the town showing them the C of A, asked if they approve that method.
Surely you mean the municipality.
The municipality of Brighton. And in that C of A, it says low pressure systems approved. It was asked for being there because there's a motion to go that way. So the town had to approve that, the municipality had to okay the Ministry of Environment to issue that type of system to be used, correct? Before the certificate of authorization was issued, correct?
Through the chair, that's what I understand, yes.
Yes. Then, if you look at the tribunal decision that came, there was supposed to be an issue of contamination. And the contamination, quote me if I'm wrong, had to do with the depth that you had to dig and how much you had to dewater, how it would affect the wells in the surrounding areas. Is that correct?
That's correct.
A low pressure system is shallow. A gravity system is deeper. So when we go with gravity in a lift station, when we lift the product up, where does it go into? It goes into a low pressure line to the lift station. Presqu'île is already there. There's already 4 houses that are there that are addressed and attached to the system. So to say that the town, the municipality isn't there, we've been using it for a number of years. So in the tribunal report, I looked at it, it's not signed. And the decision, usually when you go to a tribunal, I've been an expert witness at a tribunal, I still am, and I've been involved in 4 tribunals myself with municipalities, I've won them. There's usually a final decision that's made at a tribunal, not giving you a 50-50 split, correct?
Through the chair, I have never seen an LPAT or an OMB decision that essentially is a non-decision. This was the first.
This decision essentially said, we're not making a decision back to the municipality. This is your problem.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to move on to Councillor Tadman if that's okay.
That's correct.
Councillor Tadman.
Through you, Mayor, and I know you won't allow it, but we have a peer reviewer here who peer reviews in Quinte West, and an engineer here, also another engineer. When this all came the last time and was voted against, I was probably only one supported it because I did my homework. And I talked to the Director of Public Works, Chris Angelo, and he said he prefers this type, the grinders, because the cost to build and go through the other process. I'm not worried about the developer. I mean, what costs the municipality to maintain the pumping station. And Mr. Angelo told me about 2 weeks ago that when they're finished with the next phase of subdivision, they will have 1,000 of these working with no problems. And so, for the life of me, I can't understand why people are opposing something that's proven that works well. And they also told me that people can buy insurance if you're worried about the grinder being at the house and the owner's responsibility. You can buy insurance for something like $6 a month. I think it costs about $10,000, and you agree with that when you buy the house. So I just don't understand what all this problem is about, and this has been held up so long. It's just totally unfair.
I'm not sure there is a problem tonight. We're simply being asked to receive a report, and we'll have information come forward from staff. And I anticipate that staff would provide council with a cost-benefit analysis of moving forward with either system, so that council can provide a good, solid decision on behalf of the community. I understand what the Public Works Director of Quinte West has to say. I also understand that staff at Kenora, a northern community, warn against these kinds of systems. So what I would like to hear is what Brighton staff have to say, and that's the recommendation that I think this council should adhere to, or at least consider more carefully than other communities. Councillor Anderson.
Really?
Yes, really.
It says in here also that Preston did have a concern about the one system, and that hasn't been resolved yet, so it just said that he had a concern. So I think it's part of what you're talking about. They need a little more time to think about it, because there's new people on the block here. Also, there was also a mention here that affordable housing, that this system would also add you said $10,000, which it said it would add another $25,000 to the cost of the home. So I think there's a lot to look at. Maybe you've been there, but I haven't seen a lot of it. I'm understanding it better. It was a very good presentation document to read and absorb, but I think a little more time, I think, for some of us will be good.
Just to be clear, I think the $25,000 comes from the developer's presentation that asks digging deeper into the ground for a gravity-fed system would add 25 grand to the cost of a home. I don't think there's any consideration for the additional, what the cost of the pump would be in that. So
I may be wrong, but I think the pump and the grinder and all those features had quite a large price tag, and then there's the maintenance of them. They had a good life, apparently. And I read what Quinte West is doing, and it seems to be working well for them, from what I understand as well. But I didn't know about the insurance. That's a good idea.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. For clarity, tonight, we're not deciding on the system. We're deciding whether or not we want to receive this report, knowing that staff are going to bring back more information at a later date. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tadman.
May I ask when the later date is?
I would presume sometime after we've stopped worrying about flooding issues along the lakeshore, since that is taking up considerable staff time at the moment, as it should. Anything further? Councillor Bateman?
This question could apply to this or any other ones. For Daryl, if there's a binding subdividers agreement and adequate securities, does that protect the municipality and its residents, regardless of where it is?
Through the chair, that's the singular intent of the subdividers agreement and letter of security is to protect the municipality and the residents. We have been advised by Quinte West that they have, through their experiences, developed, if you will, specialized clauses that go into their subdivision agreements incidental to these types of systems. Yes.
Councillor Anderson, did I see your hand? Thank you. Anything further? Councillor LeBlanc?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Through Daryl. Through Mayor. Sorry, Mayor. I'm sorry, I didn't devote that. Sorry, Mayor. No. The thing is all I try to do is fairness.
Okay.
Because if you go through the process of a certificate of authorization, which is a government given by the Crown and issued by the Crown, and an individual goes through, and I've probably done 300 of them, and I've never had one ever by a town, once it's been issued by the Ministry of Environment, changed. Have you ever seen that, Daryl? One changed?
You're referring to an ECA through the chair?
Yeah, the certificate of authorization.
No,
by the
I've
Ministry.
never seen one change.
No, neither have I.
No.
Anyway, you guys.
Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc. Anything further? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Our next report is with regard to an application for fill permit, part lots 31 and 32, concession B, Municipality of Brighton. Mr. Tai, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further, Your Worship.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that Council receives the report regarding application for fill permit as prepared by the municipal planning consultant, and that Council directs staff to continue with processing the subject application, and that Council direct the applicant to provide compelling evidence incidental to existing soils and groundwater conditions, and that a public meeting be scheduled and advertised in accordance with the prevailing requirements, and further, that the applicant's advisors be required to attend the scheduled public meeting for the purpose of providing a proposal, presentation, and available to answer any questions from Council and members of the public. Is there any discussion? Councillor Rowley.
Yes, about the advisors, could you just reread that, because I was looking for my notes to find my questions, and that would have been one of, excuse me, one of mine as far as the advisors for the applicant, so we can get questions.
Yeah, it is the final line of the motion, and it reads that the applicant's advisors be required to attend the scheduled public meeting for the purpose of providing a proposal presentation and available to answer any questions from Council and members of the public. You're welcome. Is there anything further? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. We have no unfinished business, so we'll move into bylaws. And I'll need a seconder. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc that Council gives this bylaw its first, second, and third reading. This is a bylaw regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment for the Kuipers lot lands. Thank you. The council gives this bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw under the provisions of Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, to amend bylaw number 140-2002 as otherwise amended of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton as it applies to certain lands in Part Lot 4, Concession 2, Part 4 of Plan 39R 7037 in the Municipality of Brighton, to change the zoning from Urban Residential 1 Exception Number 2 Zone and Environmental Protection Exception Number 2 Zone to Urban Residential 1 Exception Number 32 Zone and Environmental Protection Exception Number 6 Zone. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Our next bylaw is with regard to a proposed zoning bylaw amendment being the DeWall property on Lisgar. I'll need a seconder for this one. It is, thank you. Moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council gives this bylaw its first, second, and third reading, and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw under the provisions of Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, to amend bylaw number 140-2002 as otherwise amended, of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton as it applies to certain lands located in Part Lot 25, Concession A, Part 1 of Plan 39R 11286, 158 Lisgar Street in the Municipality of Brighton to change the zoning from Community Facility Exception Number 7 Zone to Rural Residential Zone. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. And I have another bylaw with regard to the pre-servicing authorization of the Roslyn development. I have a motion moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that council gives this bylaw its first, second, and third reading, and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute a pre-servicing agreement between the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton and 1751819 Ontario Incorporated regarding a plan of subdivision on a property located in part of Lot 2, Concession 2, and part of Lots 9, 10, and 11, north of Sanford Street in the Municipality of Brighton in the County of Northumberland. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Our next bylaw is with regard to a model home authorizing bylaw for the same subdivision. I have a motion moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. The council gives this bylaw its first, second, and third reading, and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a model home agreement between the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton and 1751819 Ontario Incorporated regarding a plan of subdivision on a property located in part of Lot 2, Concession 2, and part of Lots 9, 10, and 11 north of Sanford Street, Municipality of Brighton in the County of Northumberland. Yeah. 'Tis. So if we turn to our agenda on page 7 and 8, the bylaw should be, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute a model home agreement between the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton. Oh, that's what it says. Model home agreement. I apologize. Yeah, there it is. Yep, there it is. One's pre-servicing and one's model home agreement. So it is correct. Any discussion? All in favor? Those opposed? The motion's carried. And bylaw, this bylaw is with regard to a pre-servicing authorizing bylaw for Hamilton Woods. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. The council gives this bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a pre-servicing agreement between the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton and Gordon Toby Incorporated regarding a plan of subdivision on a property located in part of Lots 1 and 2, Concession 1, part Lots 15, Registered Plan 28, in the Municipality of Brighton in the County of Northumberland. Is there any discussion? Councillor Tadman.
Could I have a recorded vote on that, please?
You may. Is there any discussion before I go? So our recorded vote is called by the clerk and is called in alphabetical order, starting with the member of council who asked for the recorded vote, which was Councillor Tadman.
Councillor Mary Tadman?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink?
Yes.
Mayor Brian Ostrander?
Yes.
Councillor Ron Anderson?
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman?
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc?
Yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Our next bylaw is with regard to a model home authorizing bylaw in the same subdivision, and it's moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Tadman. The council gives this bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute a model home agreement between the corporation of the municipality of Brighton and Gordon Toby Developments Incorporated regarding a part of lots 1 and 2, concession 1, part of lot 15, registered plan 28, in the municipality of Brighton in the county of Northumberland. Is there any discussion? Councillor LeBlanc.
As we heard from the other people, when they built model homes the last time, they sold them, through you, Mayor. Is there any way through Darrell that we can stop these homes from being sold until the stormwater management agreement is agreed to and finalized?
Through the chair, until a subdivision is given final approval and the subdivision agreement and the M plan and any R plans are actually registered, the subdivision lands are one single lot or parcel. Therefore, even though on a plan of subdivision, draft plan approved, you have a model home on a proposed individual lot, that lot does not exist until the subdivision agreement and the M plan are registered on title. So I'm not clear on how these individual homes could have been sold to other individuals when in fact they were all on the same property. There would be nothing preventing the developer from entertaining offers or letters of intent, but the actual transaction in terms of ownership of the property would be in contravention of the Planning Act.
So it did happen where we entered into a model home agreement, and between the building of those homes and the next planning meeting, they were sold. Now, I believe those model homes were built on existing lots from a former phase of the development. So it just simply took a connection and what do you call that when a residency, a permission to occupy, an occupancy permit. Thank you.
And through the chair, if the lots already existed, then that is not what we're dealing with respect to Roslyn or Hamilton Woods in phase 2.
So no occupancy could happen until such time as we have a subdivision agreement.
That's correct.
Signed and in place with the municipality and the developer.
That's correct.
Thank you. Councillor Tadman.
Couldn't register it.
Right.
On title, so they couldn't move in.
Can't sell it. Yep. Anything else? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And our final bylaw this evening is with regard to the road allowance policy. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, and it looks like you started to sign it, Councillor Tadman. Are you okay seconding it?
Maybe my hand got cramped.
I've got your first name.
Thank you.
I'll write your second name.
Good, because I can't even read yours, so.
That's why I print it beside it. The council gives, so it's moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Tadman. The council gives this bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw for the corporation of the municipality of Brighton to adopt a policy to govern the closure and sale. It says township-owned municipal road allowances. I'm going to change that to municipally owned, if that's all right with the mover and seconder. To govern the closure and sale of municipally owned municipal road allowances. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Now we move into question period. If there are questions from members of the public, please come forward. Ask your question. It has to be with regard to items that were on our agenda this evening. Mr. Soulis.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. In light of the discussion that went on with respect to when it is that a model home can be sold, do I understand that you're right that a model home can't be sold until the plan has been totally approved? That'd be for the whole of the subdivision.
The model home can't be sold or occupied until there is a subdivision agreement between the municipality and the developer on those subject lands.
Okay, then as a follow-up, how do those model homes on Raglan get sold?
I think that those lots were existing lots in a former phase of the subdivision.
And so they preempted the larger lot approval, phase approval.
I don't believe that the developer did anything illegal or untoward. I think he asked for model homes to be built on existing lots and then sold them.
Okay, then fast forward to today's meeting here at council, where you've approved model homes to be built on the phase 2 portion of Hamilton Woods. How's that going to play out?
So we do not have a subdivision agreement for that portion of the development. We only have, or we will only have, a pre-servicing agreement once it's signed with the municipality and the developer, but no subdivision agreement yet.
So, in other words, Toby Developments will be allowed to build model homes on phase 2 of Hamilton Woods, will not be able to sell them or allow people to occupy them.
Until he has a subdivision agreement.
Until he has a subdivision agreement.
Which could happen next month.
I have another question in another area. We all heard how it was that the peer engineer is quite confident that the plan that was submitted by Toby with respect to wastewater management is approved, I guess you could say conditionally. They didn't vet the plan. The plan was submitted, and because it's submitted, it's approved or accepted, whichever you will. And with the Lower Trent Authority not having regulatory authority over the municipality, the only one that's left then is the provincial environmental people. So, as that plan was submitted by Toby, has it been approved then by the municipality, given the outstanding issues with respect to the environmental people in Peterborough and so on?
Mr. Ty, would you care to address that question?
Through the chair, with respect, I'm not sure I understand it. Are we referring to wastewater or stormwater?
No, he was referring to stormwater.
Stormwater.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, it's stormwater.
The applicant has yet to pursue an ECA for stormwater management. That clause is written into the pre-servicing agreement, as well as Lower Trent, although they've been involved in the dialogue on a constant basis for 3 to 4 years. I am aware that the municipality's peer reviewer has kept the Lower Trent's engineer involved, and they've had discussions and meetings and so on. And the municipality's peer reviewer is the one charged with the ultimate responsibility to make a recommendation to this council. The Lower Trent's recommendation is invited as well, but ultimately it's the municipality's peer review engineer. And we heard this evening that Mr. Keane is confident in the report that has been submitted by Toby Developments.
And who will ultimately approve that stormwater plan?
The municipality ultimately approves it.
Council?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And so that stormwater management plan, which has not been approved but has been submitted, predicated on inputs from the environmental people provincially, and the Lower Trent, it's going to be approved by council without anybody really looking at the nuts and bolts of it, on the basis that the peer engineer is confident that once in place, it will satisfy the requirements for the municipality.
Yes, I think that's a fair comment.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Should I answer this question? No. Go ahead. Mrs. Richardson.
Thank you. I'm not sure if it'll be you or Mr. Ty.
And your name's Brenda Richardson.
Brenda Richardson,
Yeah,
yes, thank you. As I mentioned, President Parkinson just told me at the last council meeting that there still is not an ECA on Harbor Pond. How can it be, and we were explained before that the town would transfer the pond over to Toby Development, but he has to get an ECA, so how can we hand it over to him to do his work if we don't have an ECA on the pond?
My understanding is through the chair. My understanding is that the ECA would actually be amended. There's an existing ECA for the pond, and Toby Developments would be charged with the responsibility with the permission of the municipality to apply for an amendment.
So we're getting two pieces of information where at one time we hear that there is no ECA for the pond, and then another. So I'm not going to put you on the spot, Mr. Ty, but we will. I will get Mr. Castleman to make some notes, and we'll get back to you, because I know what you're going to say.
No, you don't.
I do.
My next question is, who is your contact now with the MOECC? David Fisher is no longer covering our area, as he is in investigations, and he said he might be back in December. Victoria Light is away has been away since May the 5th, till the end of May. So who's your contact at MOECC?
Through the chair, personally, I don't have a contact. I rely on the municipality's peer review engineer.
So we don't know who Mr. Keane contacts at MOECC?
Should we not know?
No, we have staff through a peer review engineer who take care of that for us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Langevin, Mayor, Council. I live on Cove Crescent. I surround the pond. I read the description of Mr. Toby's building a Lance Street stormwater pond, and then it's going to phase down and come down into the Harbor Point pond. They'll enlarge that as well. My question to Mr. Ty is, are they going to build the Lance pond, have it all hooked up, and the stormwater pond before he puts in all that construction? Or because if he puts in all that construction, maybe there's a time will come he'll say, well, I can't build that other Lance Street pond, and we're just all going to go into Cove Street, the Cove Pond. So what is the process? Does he build the ponds first and then construct homes other than the model home?
Through the chair, I don't have that specific information. Again, Mr. Keane would advise with respect to the timing of the requisite excavations to the pond.
He said they would correlate when he asked the question. I was kind of disappointed nobody picked up on that, because we're talking about ponds all the time and not one of you asked that question, because it has been a trouble to me, being around the ponds now for the last few years. Anyhow, that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from members of the public? We have no in-camera session this evening. Our confirmatory bylaw is moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Tadman. The Council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading, and finally passes a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton Council Planning meeting held on May 13th, 2019. Is there any discussion? All in favor? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley. Mr. LeBlanc, we're still in a council meeting. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Tadman, that the planning meeting of May 13th, 2019, adjourn at 8:28 p.m. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you all.